Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 80 Days. Last, we left our adventurers in the Asian territories, specifically here in Hong Kong. We are now trying to figure out our way of crossing the Pacific and making it over to North or South America. The plan is to try and somehow get to Yokohama, which looks like departs tomorrow. Let's go ahead and head back. Stay in a hotel. I was loath to leave Monsieur Fogg for any length of time, having so narrowly escaped the clutches of that blackguard Fix. We explored the city from the comfort of a mechanical sedan chair, but my terrible experience dimmed the colors and tarnished the beauty of the streets. I found myself anxious to leave. Alright, let's figure out what time this leaves. 9. We do not have any time to do much. As soon as the market opens, let's check. Nothing, because I think we've already been here. Alright. Let's get out of here. The Jade Tiger was an old Moj-class Parisian airship, renovated with Chinese colors and fittings. It was painted all over with Manchu luck symbols, swastiks, stylized bats, and coins. We climbed aboard, ready for the journey east. Phileas Fogg attempts round-the-world adventure. Captain Sue wore a traditional Manchu pal in blue cotton, bone hairpins in her fan-shaped hair, and a jade thumb ring. I bowed low in courtly greeting. She looked at me quizzically, and then asked a series of questions in Chinese. I did not know enough of the language to identify a particular variant. An English-speaking crew member was summoned, her tool belt hung with rope, bolt cutters, and climbing equipment. The captain says he expected you to speak Cantonese, she translated, because you were in Hong Kong. I was only briefly in Hong Kong, I sighed. I did not have much time to practice my languages. The crew member rattled her bolt cutters at me. The captain speaks Cantonese, Mandarin, 3 dialects of Manchu, Russian, and Arabic. Are any of those known to you? I am afraid not, I conceded. The captain, for all her delicately arranged hair and grace, looked thoroughly exasperated and stalked off in a huff. The crew member chuckled and stuck her hand out at me. Sung Shiying. Looks like I'll be looking after you and your master this trip. Madame Song, I ventured. Song Zhu-ying shuddered. Song Zhu-ying's fine. Try not to mangle it too much, eh, Passepartout? Her pronunciation was, of course, flawless. Merde. Right. What is your wish, master? Passepartout. How will we cross the Pacific, monsieur? There are many options, but which one we will choose will decide our route across the Americas. How are our funds? We are very well funded indeed. You have made some excellent decisions. Well, thank you, sir. Monsieur Fogg took exception to the moth-eaten red silk drapings which adorned our cabin and asked me to take them down for the duration of the voyage. Is it their condition you cannot bear? I asked. Does it matter? He replied with perfect equanimity. I suppose it does not in the end. I replied, attempting to consider the matter from my master's ever-logical perspective. Song Zhu-ying looked terribly surprised when she came to fetch us for dinner and saw the bare-walled room. My master is a plain fellow, I explained. How nice for him to have the luxury of taste, was her only remark, but I felt its sting keenly. almost there. We dined in the captain's quarters, accompanied by Zhu Ying. I am going to butcher that every time I say that. And every time it's going to be a completely different time, different way of saying it than the time I said it before. Oh well. An attempt was made. Accompanied by a Siberian tiger-skin rug sprawled across the floor, a note of sybaritic indulgence in an otherwise plainly decorated room. The captain shot it herself, Zhu Ying remarked, miming an arrow shot. She loves archery almost as much as she loves the jade tiger. Where did she learn it? Therein lies a tale, the crew member smiled with relish. The captain's father was too old and weak to join the army, and so Captain Su put on the clothing of a boy and rode out to take his place. How daring of her, I gasped. It was a grave risk, but she served for 12 years and gained so much honor that when she was discovered, the generals gifted her with an airship and forgave her deception. How marvelous! I looked at the captain with admiration in my eyes, and she narrowed her gaze at me, and then at Zhu Ying, who paled. Oh dear, she muttered. I think the captain's irritated that I'm telling tales. She is very modest, as befits a great hero, I said. Yes, that's it, Zhu Ying mumbled, and fell silent for the rest of the meal. A most stimulating dinner at the captain's table, all told. We tethered at Yokohama in the early afternoon. My eye passed lightly over the slope-roofed buildings, carriages, and bare cherry trees. I made a particular effort to thank Captain Su for her hospitality in an attempt to convince her that not all foreigners were so boorish as she imagined. Alas, I am not entirely certain I changed her mind. Ready, Passepartout? My master called. Of course, monsieur, I replied eagerly, and followed him onto Japanese soil. We should have plenty of time to explore. It was hard to believe that Yokohama had only relatively recently opened to foreigners. There was an entire foreigners district not far from the waterfront, where it was as common to hear Chinese or Russian as Japanese. There was a melding of cultures and clothing styles. Russians arrayed in their rich colors, hoop-skirted British ladies lately of Bengal or Singapore, Americans who had adopted the coat-like haori over their shirts and trousers. I noticed a Japanese man watching the scene with a look of intense concentration and scribbling in a sketchbook. What are you doing? He jumped and left a smear of ink on the paper. He looked up, clearly irritated. Do you mind, he said, his accent an unholy mix of Dutch, French, and English. I am making a drawing for a woodcut. The skirts aren't that voluminous, I commented, and he sniffed in affront. Though, I amended hastily, you have drawn them well. It is an artistic impression of the foreigners, he stressed. Well, it is certainly artistic, I allowed. The scene on the page was much more lively than the merchants haggling and their wives and children riding about in carriages. You are very strange people, he pronounced after a brief silence. Everyone is strange, I replied thoughtfully, thinking of my travels. He shrugged, clearly unconvinced. He colored one of the women's skirts lovingly, his hand on the page much gentler and kinder than his voice had been. Finally, he thrust the paper in my direction, assuring me that it was only a preliminary sketch. I accepted gracefully, charmed that he had chosen to bestow a gift upon a near stranger. I stored it carefully. It was a fine souvenir of Yokohama. Let's hit the market. Sell that. Pretty good. Pyongyang. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. Well, Burlington. then I may want to keep that rifle. And buy the amethyst. I think that's pretty much it for now. So let's go ahead and get a plan on. Looks like we're going to be heading into San Francisco. Departs at 3. Oof. 14 days, that census said. Day 40. We arrive there after tomorrow, day 48. Giving us 32 days to still circle across the Atlantic and still make it back to London. I think we are still good to go. Not much choice we have anyway. Still have to stay here overnight, and this is our only path across the Pacific currently. As night fell, I went to stretch my legs and fell into discussion with a cheerful Siamese master who had mislaid a locket, which I spotted, and who then informed me that some buyers will pay well for amethysts from Hong Kong. I thanked him, and he smiled and went about his affairs. Alright then. Let's go ahead and embark. Looks like we are going to have to be tending to our master unsure fog this entire time. We do not have anything that's going to help with the journey in damaging of the health, so lots of mustache grooming, it appears. The Water Lily was a sleek, iron-hulled ship to submarine prototype, captained by a severe American by the name of Wicker, and crewed by a mix of Americans, Chinese, and Japanese, who all spoke a kind of salty, curse-studded sailor's English. In addition to the usual complement, the Water Lily carried an entire corps of brass-goggled engineers and a brace of submariners on standby, should the captain call the order to submerge. The rumor was that she was a Confederate vessel, sold off to a private concern in the later, more desperate stages of the Civil War, but I saw no trace of a dark past aboard. The crew seemed a happy family, and welcomed us into their iron-hulled bosom. Wait to do that, we'll talk. Greetings, Captain. Passepartout, what do you want? What can you tell me of San Francisco? I have heard there are many Chinese immigrants in San Francisco. Right? How about Salt Lake? I believe so. I knew a man who once took the Transcontinental Express from San Francisco to Salt Lake City. And then what about Salt Lake to Burlington? Did you realize that the most efficient way to Burlington from here is through Salt Lake City? That is good to know. How about to Washington eventually? Did you know some buyers will pay well for cowboy boots from Washington? Thank you for that. Alright. Our cabin, very hardly spacious, was adequate to our needs. One of the midshipmen came by to show us how to use the pressure seals in case of submersion, but in all other aspects, I looked forward to a peaceful steamship ocean crossing. I was not to be so lucky. Let's respond to our little friend here who likes to make fun of me. Alright. Salty air blew cool and sharp against my face as I opened the door onto the top deck. It was painfully early, and the only passengers awake were a group of Chinese laborers hunched miserably near the stern. One of their number was vomiting copiously into a bucket. I offered him my own secret remedy, which I had brewed up for just such an occasion. He swallowed it down with a certain dubious desperation, but immediately improved in both complexion and temperament. He thanked me most profusely. I asked them about the captain, but with no language in common communication was impossible, so we settled into playing dice in quiet silence until the sun rose. Right. I am at your service, Monsieur Fogg. Passepartout, there you are. Want some dominoes? That would be most entertaining. We must find a route that will get us as close to Europe as possible. We are quite comfortable still at 4,000 pounds. I must say you have been most cautious so far. Very good. I accompanied Monsieur Fogg to a game of whist with a family of American missionaries who were traveling back to San Francisco for a family wedding. My master began strongly, but Mademoiselle Loretta, the eldest girl, had a sharp eye and won several hands in a row. A new round was dealt. I noticed Mademoiselle Loretta smile triumphantly at my master and play another winning hand. The minister's daughter accepted Monsieur Fogg's congratulations demurely, though I saw a flash of something altogether unsporting in her eyes as she lowered her lashes. I added my congratulations, though. I felt something was amiss with the seemingly pious Mademoiselle Loretta. Greetings, Mademoiselle. Passepartout. Why, hello. Right. Let's ask about San Francisco. They say that San Francisco is one of the most advanced American cities. What about Vegas? I would not hold out too much, monsieur, but now I think I will marry a Frenchman. Really? A particular one or any? Oh, any will do, so long as they have the vowels. What about Omaha? You mentioned trains. I've been told Calgary is connected to Regina by rail. Let me tell you, the quickest way to Regina from here is via Gastown. About Calgary. I wish I knew, but the quickest way to Calgary from here is through Gastown. A hand of dominoes, perhaps. Don't mind if I do. Tell me about Gastown, then. Let me tell you, you can buy harmonicas in Gastown, extremely valuable in Winnipeg. It wouldn't surprise me if the quickest way to Winnipeg from here is via Calgary. How about Toronto? What a question. Still, the quickest way to Toronto from here is through Gastown. Gastown, Gastown, Gastown. I don't even think we're gonna hit there. No. That's still gonna hurt us. Our best bet is to hit New York, then Ponta Delgada, London. So I think we're making progress. I spent today in the company of the Water Lily submariners. They were all hardy men and women who preferred the dim, enclosed spaces of the hold to the top deck. Too much sky, one of them said, squinting suspiciously. Her crewmate nodded. All that fresh air. They shuddered collectively and suggested a bracing race to the boiler room. I impressed them with my physical prowess, coming in a respectable fourth just behind their commander. She was a half-Japanese, half-American sailor by the name of Davis. Izumi to my friend, she said, clapping me heavily on the shoulder. Now a rematch of your choice. Very well, I declared, and promptly suggested a test of acrobatic skill. Though the submariners were all fit as horses, they had never attempted to, for instance, form a pyramid or walk the length of a corridor on their hands. They competed with me gamely, but admitted themselves outclassed. Commander Davis even applauded. Izumi nodded as I took my leave. You're not so bad. Oh, still days to go. I was climbing the rigging entirely innocently, and not at all for the purposes of spying on the crew to appease my own rapacious curiosity, when I heard two of the crewmen arguing in a pidgin mix of English and Japanese. I closed my eyes and listened to their voices. Only a few words were audible over the howling of the wind. Shrine, heathen, worship. Before a sudden scream rent the air. One of the sailors was falling from the platform's edge. I was unable to look away as he fell. His body lay still and crumpled on the deck, but I heard his scream in my head for days after. I looked up and managed to catch sight of the fallen sailor's companion, his face still and pallid. Was that guilt in his eyes, or merely shock? He slipped away before the captain arrived. I followed him. He retired to the crew quarters, and I began to hear the sound of desperate, muttered prayers. Oh. Looks like it is murder on the Water Lily. The Water Lily's crew had a funeral for the dead sailor. I was not specifically invited, but felt a sense of responsibility, having witnessed the man's fatal plunge. Captain Wicker led the Christian service with customary grimness. I was surprised by the absence of the sailor's companion, who had been arguing with him just before his fall. Yet he was not the only one missing from the funeral. Oddly, only half the crew had come to pay their respects. I asked my neighbor about this breach of custom, and she narrowed her eyes. Joseph was a convert, she told him defiantly. The captain taught him to read the Bible himself. The rest of the crew are heathens. They stay away from our godly ceremonies. Alright, passport. Monsieur Fogg. He must attend to you. Storm, too exhausted to write a proper entry. Suffice to say, we are still afloat. As we settled down for the night, I was struck by an unrelated thought. Monsieur Fogg, the dateline. I have altered our watch already, Monsieur Fogg replied calmly. Did you think I might forget? The master was, of course, correct. With an eye such as his, it was unthinkable that he might miss such a detail. Imagine what might have transpired had we forgotten. A less precise man than Monsieur Fogg might have finished on the 80th day and yet believed himself to have lost. Alright. Man, we've still got a ways. Yesterday's storm hit us with little warning. One moment, I was preparing Monsieur Fogg's shaving water to exactly the right temperature. The next, we were being tossed from one end of the cabin to the other. We were only lucky that the bed was securely nailed to the floor. The ship shuddered and moaned as the seas flickered with lightning. The storm lasted nearly 6 hours and blew us far off course. The captain spent most of the day peering at his charts, trying to locate our position. There is no land anywhere upon the horizon. Fabulous. Oh snap. That sucks. The captain announced change of destination. Oh, this is gonna set us back a bit. The Water Lily would now make for nearby Hawaii rather than San Francisco. We would make port in Honolulu in 5 days, and would have to find our own further conveyance from there. Monsieur Fogg's lips pressed ever so slightly together, a rare outward sign of entirely understandable annoyance. This, my master said, will not do. Indeed not, sir, I agreed, not even daring to calculate the delay and expense our unexpected diversion would cause. Monsieur Fogg gave me a cool, appraising glance. Captain Wicker has reneged upon his word as a gentleman, he said curtly, before lowering his voice to an almost furtive undertone. Our course is clear. We must mutiny. I opened my mouth to agree wholeheartedly, but he continued on without so much as a pause. See to it, Passepartout. Use your natural charm, I interjected brightly. Quite, he said, with the agreeableness of a gentleman who has just given his valet a near Herculean task. We will mutiny in 5 days. When we reach Honolulu, make your preparations as you see fit. Huh. Intriguing. My task was clear. I was to foment mutiny aboard the Water Lily. I decided to begin by exploiting the crew's animosity towards one another. Divide and conquer, or so dear Mammon always counseled. Gossip and rumor would be a good way to start, I thought, though such subtleties might also be lost on a crew of sailors. So I decided to gossip about the captain, planning to forcibly convert all the Shinto crew when we reached port. Some of the younger members seemed alarmed, but others merely laughed off the possibility. Didn't go too well that time. It was with satisfaction that I noted a certain increase in tension aboard the Water Lily, a situation I would carefully have to exacerbate if my master's mutiny was to have any chance of success. Next, I attempted to ingratiate myself with Commander Davis and the submariners, who were rather storm-tossed and disgruntled. There are no storms underwater, the commander muttered, her hair dangled underneath her cap. We should have submerged. I agreed. Captain Wicker risked all our lives. I think perhaps he does not trust your ability as submariners. Ooh, underhanded. Very nice. The commander's face darkened at my assertion. Perhaps you are right at that, she said. Perhaps so. I took my leave. Let's keep it subtle, giving my seed of doubt time to sprout in my absence. No need to be too blunt. If we appear too blunt, we may have to answer some unwanted questions. I had attempted to suborn the obvious targets aboard the Water Lily, but wars were often won by the unexpected. With that in mind, I turned my attention upon the valets and batmen to the ship's officers. Being a gentleman's gentleman myself, I knew the value of a good servant. Conversely, I was also aware of the disruption a bad one could cause. I appealed to them with my considerable charisma and style. Making an impassioned, prettily worked speech, I dare say I managed to sham a few crystalline tears at exactly the right moment. It was almost laughably easy to draw them into my cause. The captain and his officers were not, it must be said, popular amongst the servants. Let's tend to our master. Much appreciated, my Passepartout. I feel most comfortable. I spent the day putting the last finishing touches to my planned mutiny. It was a matter as delicate and serious as the creation of a souffle by a master chef. I spread word of my signal amongst my allies, and stayed up late, ensuring every man and woman on my side was true. Good plan. One last, keep you nice and healthy. We reached Honolulu in the dark. The captain took a small skiff into the harbor with a few of his officers, wishing to inquire about repairs before putting the Water Lily into dry dock. Monsieur Fogg watched the boat for a long moment. Now is the time, he said crisply. I trust everything is in order. I assured him it was, and he nodded, having expected no other response. Let us hope so. With that, my master retreated to his cabin, and I called the signal to arms. The Water Lily erupted into chaos. Everywhere was the clash of sabers and pistols. Now and then I heard the shriek of the officer's sonic weapons. But I was not alone. The half of the crew that followed the Shinto creed fell in behind me, lit with the desire to teach their Christian crewmates a lesson rather than mutiny, but their anger helped stoke the fires of rebellion. The loyal officers found themselves inexplicably delayed and thwarted in their efforts to dress and arm to meet the mutiny. The valets and batmen had thrown their loyalty behind my uprising and bought us precious time to establish our control over the ship. The Chinese laborers rewarded my friendship with steadfast loyalty, throwing themselves into mutiny with all the desperation of men and women who utterly loathed sea travel and longed to revenge themselves upon their instrument of torment in any fashion. They lit fires and tore up the already ragged sails, causing some welcome chaos. The submariners, led by Commander Davis, charged out of the hold of the ship like a horde of impossibly athletic avenging angels. There was a long, terrible moment when I wondered at their allegiance. Then Commander Davis caught my eye and winked. "It's Izumi to my friends," she shouted cheerfully, driving back any stragglers loyal to Captain Wicker. By noon it was clear how the day would end. The mutineers raised a ragged cheer of victory. I myself had ended up with a debonair scratch upon the cheek, and had somehow come to be in possession of a brace of pistols and 3 sabers. By the time the captain and the officers returned, we had complete control of the ship. They were quickly trussed up and thrown into the brig for safekeeping. Monsieur Fogg emerged, surveying the scene of recent battle with a calm eye. "Well done," he said, with classic gentlemanly understatement. Still, it was well done, and more, if I do say so myself. Fabulous. Still on our way to San Francisco. Wonderful. Speaking with Reverend now. Not sure if there's much that he can't tell us already. You can reach New Orleans from Dallas aboard the Texas and Pacific Railway. Right. About route from Omaha to Albuquerque? I doubt it. Now anyway, would you believe it? I introduced my daughter to cards to occupy her mind. Indeed. She is rather too occupied by them now, I fear. I'm told they say that San Francisco is one of the most advanced American cities. I tend not to discuss such things. Alright then. Domino's? What a marvelous idea. Okay. Omaha to Chicago. Yes, there is a regular service by road from Omaha to Chicago. And sure does. It's out there in the middle of the Atlantic. Never mind that. The quickest way to Ponta Delgada from here is through New Orleans. Really? That's interesting. Why that is. Maybe it's because it circles around Florida and you don't have so much land travel. I don't remember how fast trains went back in the late 1800s, but maybe the ships can outpace them? I don't know, we'll have to do some more investigating. To my amazement, the successful mutineers held a vote and elected me the new captain of Water Lily. I was delighted. Can you imagine, my friends, your humble passepartout, captain of his very own ship? Rest assured, mes amis, it was in great part a ceremonial title, which made no particular demands on my seamanship. Monsieur Fogg, though pleased by the success of our mutinous endeavor, seemed to regard my elevation in rank with some wariness. I am, he admitted, as we prepared for bed, somewhat put in mind of Bonaparte. Parbleu! Otherwise the succession passed smoothly, and I acquired Wicker's top hat as a mark of office. How dapper. I do not think I could pull off a top hat. The new first mate, a cheerful girl by the name of Wang, came to me with an intriguing notion. As you know, the Water Lily is a ship-to-submarine prototype, she said. If the submariners cooperated, we could convert the submersible and make port at San Francisco in 2 days rather than 5. That sounds fabulous. I called in Izumi, who greeted me with a flourish and a bow. My dear captain, she declared, not bothering to hide her amusement, do you have orders for me? Can you get us to San Francisco in 4 days? Izumi's eyes sparkled. Captain, I have been waiting for that order all my life. I will make the preparations, and we will submerge tomorrow at dawn. Greetings, First Mate Wang. Oh, San Francisco. We need to get down further south. None of those take us south. Except the Vegas, Albuquerque. That seems quite impossible. How do you like being captain? I do. I am at your command. Okay, tell me more about Winnipeg. It is a crossroads of sorts. Alright. How about over to Toronto? That seems quite impossible. Why aren't you just full of impossibilities? And naysay. How about Domino's? Thank you. Winnipeg. To Cheyenne, perhaps? Winnipeg to Calgary? Calgary is quite literally a one-horse town. Izumi was a woman of her word. At dawn, the Water Lily began its preparations to submerge. I cannot record the technical particulars of the enterprise, but my own experiences were thus. It began with an unholy grinding of gear so loud that I felt my head would shatter in two. The sails furled and the masts collapsed. The screw propeller engines transformed themselves. Bells and alarms sounded as the bulkheads were closed and sealed. Within an hour, the Water Lily had transmuted from a surface-skimming steamer to a watertight submarine. Izumi tossed me a fearless grin as she called for us to descend. My ears popped as we plunged ever deeper into the water of the Pacific Ocean, and a curious-sounding silence descended upon the vessel. Come on, we have got to be getting close now. I had little to do but pace the preternaturally quiet corridors of the submarine. Izumi and her crew were in firm and able control. I resolved to enjoy myself, yes. I was still captain of the Water Lily, even in her new configuration. The crew saluted every time I happened to saunter into their vicinity. On the whole, I would rather recommend submarining to the discerning traveler. We surfaced a few miles out from San Francisco. Apparently, a submarine emerging without warning in a harbor could cause all sorts of misunderstanding and complications. Izumi recommended that we row into the port on a skiff. I formally renounced my captaincy. I guess we should probably follow in the first mate. As she was next in line, she accepted the responsibility with requisite solemnity and seemed genuinely sorry to bid us goodbye. Thank you, Captain, she called. We won't forget you. I turned toward San Francisco, still shrouded in the pale pre-dawn light. We have gained 3 days, my master said, and I could not help my answering smile. Fabulous. Alright, well as we arrive into port, this is going to be a perfect place to stop. Next time, we will make our way westward or eastward across the, eventually the Rockies and the Midwest, where I currently am, and then try and hit up the East Coast. Though possibly we do need to check into New Orleans and see how quickly we can get from there out into the middle of the Atlantic, because that stop should be our final one before making it into London, barring any sea storms like we experienced in the Pacific. So, once again, thank you guys for watching. If you are enjoying these videos, feel free to like them. Go back, watch some of the ones that we've already done if you haven't, if this is where you've started. Subscribe if you're enjoying it. I'm new to this, so hopefully I'm not doing awful. Feel free to comment on the videos if you have suggestions. I would love to get your guys' input. Otherwise, I will catch all of you in the next video. See you later.